We're in an era now that we're in. Obviously, the last 3 years we went through the whole Me Too movement per se. In an era, I guess you would say, of the Harvey Weinstein aspect, what advice would you give for young female actors breaking into the business to avoid those specific situations?
Well, first of all, there's nothing better than your gut instinct. So if something doesn't feel right, it's not. That's
Mm-hmm.
one. And, and always, take somebody with you. You should never be put in a position where you should be by yourself. I mean, ever. You shouldn't be walking into somebody's house reading, nothing like that. If you're walking into Warner Brothers to audition, I mean, if we're even able to walk into Warner Brothers, to be able to have something that's not a not a self-tape from home, then, you've got a reception, you've got a guard, you've got a receptionist, you've got, you may be in the room with one person, but, if you don't feel right, you leave. You have every
Mm-hmm.
right to be all that you are. And if that does not sit right with you, then you piece the fuck out.
Have you ever been in a position to have that casting couch experience?
I have had a similar experience, or an experience once-ish. And to be honest, the thing that sucked maybe the most is that there was a woman in the room. So
Wow. Okay.
this guy was disgusting, and there was a gal. And so that's kind of what bugs me almost the most, is I was like, looking back at this stuff, because I've luckily never really have been into something too bad. But I'm, I don't know. I for the most part, I'm an Italian Jew, so maybe some of this sort of like, maybe you don't fuck with me so much does carry in the room a little.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't save you from a total asshole situation. I'm not saying anything like that, but I don't have that maybe much of a gentle vibe as
Mm-hmm.
much as maybe somebody who's a little softer around the edges would be. But when I look back at this particular audition, this moment, I remember going like, shit, she was in there. She was in there, and I hope that she got out of there right after my audition. And he was he was a creep, and he was inappropriate. And I, in the moment, was like, you know what? I'm gonna leave. And I left. I didn't even read. I just left. I was like, peace out.
This is a question for both of you, though. Like, you guys have obviously, established both your level of celebrity. How much has your life changed once you, like, I mean, what was the, for both of you, what was the moment that you were like, you felt that something is different, like in how people see you on the street, or a certain role that you both, got, where you're like, okay, I've made it. When was that moment for you, both of you? Shane, you can go first.
Well, I mean, I guess to a degree, it's kind of like it's a process. Like it's still kind of happening,
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know that it was a moment. I feel like I'm not there yet, I feel like I'm headed for that. But I feel like that is more of a byproduct of you're doing what you love and you're doing it successfully, and that's part of the stuff that comes along with it. Like, that's obviously not the goal. My goal is certainly not to be famous, and it is to support my family and certainly make some money, but not out of greed, just out of I want to support my family. And the thing that's really interesting to Keili and I both, I know, is we want to sink our teeth into great material and tell great stories like that. That's what I'm interested in. And if that turns out making you insanely famous, then I guess so be it. That's my answer. What about you, Keili?
First of all, hi Babs, and yes, Ghost is dead. I just read that. So
Ghost's still alive. He's still alive. He's coming back.
Yes. Hi, Christy Castle. I see you too. Yeah, he's coming back. He's gonna walk in just a minute. We're just making him some dinner.
I just can't wait to see Sax's face when it happens too. This motherfucker. Gonna get the gun and the bottle of alcohol again.
It'll be a slow-mo moment.
Like,
It'll be, we'll run toward each other and embrace.
Fire, and then he just dies. Honestly, I think Shane's answer is pretty damn good. For me, it hasn't been so much on screen. Mine was more theater based,
okay,
in terms of Yeah, I did a rock opera years ago that has sort of lived on and continues to sort of, evolve into other projects and potentially a film
Which opera was
or,
that?
Bear. It was called
Okay.
Bear. And it was something I was a part of since almost right when I moved from Kansas City to LA. Like it was right on the heels of moving here.
It's when she was falling in love with one Shane Johnson. That
That's true.
Yeah, and me
That's
too. I saw
true.
that show. I saw that show probably 50 times, and she was incredible in it. It is an
Shane,
incredible show.
fun
How did you
fact,
guys How did
Shane
you
was
guys
our
meet? How
fight
did you guys meet?
choreographer. Oh, how did we meet, Shane?
Well, the children are nearby, so I don't know that I can tell that story.
We,
I was a male prostitute.
he was, and he still is. No, we were in our acting class together,
Mhm.
and we had it every Tuesday and Thursday night. And I think on Tuesday night, we were sitting in the same row, and he was like, "Hey, what's your name?" And I was like, "Keili," and he was like, "Oh, like Keili and Do," which for most people maybe you don't know, it's a play, but I knew it because I had heard it a million times, and I was like, "Yeah,
No, you
yeah,
haven't.
yes, I was." No, I was like, yeah, like Keili and Do. And he's like, "I'm Shane." And I was like, "Oh, I'll remember that there was two other Shanes in the class." And so on Thursday, we were walking toward each other at the very beginning of class. He's like, "Hey, Keili." And I was like, ah. Could not remember his name for the life of me. Couldn't remember his name.
She still has trouble with my
I
time.
don't know who you are.
We've been together.
Not
We've been
a long-
together. We've been married like 16 years, and we've been
Mhm.
together almost 23 years.
That's incredible, man. It's
Oh.
it's mind-boggling, and especially in this day and age in our industry. And that's why I said you guys don't
Yeah.
have a marriage, you don't have a relationship, you have an empireship. That's to me is the goal, is when you're able, because as Shane said, like you can be on this ride, but being on the ride sometimes by yourself can be depressing, and you want to be able to have that escape, but to be able
Yeah.
to do it in the continuity that you guys have done, the foundation that you've done, the trust that you've done, the level of support for each other, you just don't see
Yeah.
that anymore. Like, you just do not see that in this business, because it's become a doggy dog world of like, what's mine is mine, and what's yours is still mine. So
Yeah.
you obviously, as I said, working, you said in theater, Shane both working as well in theater. What for you would you find the differences working in theater compared to film?
Oh, so different.
In what way? What's your experience like
Shane,
for you?
are you going?
Oh, well, first of all, I haven't done theater in a very long time. I mean, that's where I cut my teeth. I was doing a bunch of I probably did like 35, 40 plays, coming up. and there's a certain amount of, you get trying to lock in, making sure you know your lines, and your blocking, and when you have an audience, the show must go on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's all that pressure, and then there's also like trying to be present and trying to have an experience on stage every night, especially when you're doing it for like Keili. She did Bear for an entire year or longer, and so every night, like, how do you keep it fresh? How do you keep it fresh? Whereas on camera, it's like people are learning their lines sometimes right as while they're filming,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Yeah.
trying to be organic and find stuff. I don't, Keili and I don't operate that way. Like, we try to work on it and have plans and have a character and know what we're doing before we show up. But it's certainly much more short lived, and it's hotter in some ways, because it's like it's momentary and then it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with theater, it's ongoing. And like Keili's been in a couple of huge movies that were so I wouldn't argue that what she said, that Bear did a ton for her, the show did a ton for her, but Malibu's Most Wanted obviously has become a cult classic, and Pain and Gain was an awesome movie, and she did an incredible job in it. And I feel like she's got a bunch of her fan base comes from that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And she gets a lot of very interesting dick pics and things like that in her DMs.
I do. And I love them. All of
Yeah.
them. I'm
Yeah.
keeping a book.
Yeah.
Nice.
And Because
I don't know.
that's what, by the way, that's what women love that. Women,
We do.
yeah, we
No, you
love.
don't. No, you don't. You really don't. You
Oh no.
because I've always wondered the thing of like when the like for me like when these guys decide to send this shit. Like I'm like, what do you expect the response to be? Like when she opens it up, like, hey, that's a nice package. Meet me on Wednesday. Like what goes through someone's head? I couldn't even imagine myself like sitting there whipping up my shit,
I get
snap,
it.
upload,
Listen,
send, tag.
girls do this shit all the time. It's only fair that we get it in return. I'm just glad I don't see faces because I don't want to imagine their face. I just want to focus on what I'm seeing. That's it. That's all I need. I don't want to
But yeah,
connect. A nice disconnect.
Yeah, Keely's. Yeah, that's her. That's her thing. That's how we met. We met.
Yeah, through
We
a
actually
glory
met at a
hole.
glory
Yeah.
hole. At a glory hole. Yeah, that was the
That is
introduction.
true also.
let me ask you both. I mean, you guys been doing this for a long time as well. Like, do you guys still get nervous in front of a camera?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it can happen. It can definitely happen. Yeah, you kind of want to get one out of the chamber a little bit, you know, and that helps. And theater too. Theater, I mean, in terms of the last conversation we were just having, theater is you got one shot, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you go up on your lines, like no one's resetting for you. Like you got to figure your shit out, particularly in a musical, because unless you're just going to start like happy birthday to, and then the chicken, and you know, you can't make that up. It's like what it is, at, you know, to a rhythm. So that's it. You get one shot. But yeah, you can get nervous, but you know, ultimately, hopefully you've done enough reps in working on your material that now it's just like end action, and it's just another rep, and then you get another rep, and then a different angle. But yeah, you can have nerves. I know that he gets nerves too.
Do you prefer the pressure? Do you prefer the pressure of like the theater more than, you know, the slow aspect of prime time?
No preference. Different beast.
Yeah.
Which one do you find more challenging? Me,
I mean, theater is more challenging.
way more challenging. Way more challenging. Like to me, that you have to be on. But I believe that pressure, the way I look at it, I said this to Shane before, is that like whether you know, because we're all looking for that. I think as actors, you guys have obviously seen the movie Legends of the Fall with Brad Pitt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And I think we've all, when we get into business, want that moment that Brad had at the end of that movie where you're like, the first time you saw it, you're like, this guy's going to be a star. Like you knew in that moment that this guy was going to be something special. And I believe that like when you're going for any job, or even necessarily, and this I was talking with Shane, like with sometimes you get a bad script, you get a really, you know, crappy script.
Mm-hmm.
It's up to you, I believe, as an actor to find a way to make the script work, even if it's shit, because I look at that potential person that's watching you for the first time. It's almost like an audition for another role that you haven't gotten. Like you could play it and be really crappy and just say, okay, you know what?
That is your audition for your next or down the road piece. That's correct. It's always up to you. And yes, I heard you guys discussing like, you know, actor versus meh script. And I do agree. But that being said, you know, you can still have someone make some good choices. I think some stuff can be forgivable if somebody makes some interesting choices.
So what's your, like, I mean, for both of you, like what's your approach when it comes to taking a certain role? Are you more interested in the script? Are you more interested in who's in the movie per se with you, who you're working with, or who's directing it?
Script, director, who's in it for me, I would say.
Yeah, I would say that too. And also the part, right? Like your particular part in it. And because sometimes, you know, you'd be like, oh, this is really great, but this isn't my casting, or I'm not into that particular role. But you know, I would agree. I think it's the script first and foremost is the thing that's going to be exciting, you know, because we've all had those auditions for things that you're like, well, it's actually a pretty interesting role, but the script is awful.
Yes, but I'll tell you, the very first job that I had when I moved out to LA was I worked for a friend's mom who was a fantastic casting director, who has Phyllis Huffman, who has since passed, but she cast all of Clint Eastwood's pieces. And so I got to work with Clint, which was amazing. And he is fantastic as a human being, but he was just great. But Clint gives you one take and then you move on. And that's it. Unless a light or a boom is just going to go across, that's all the fuck he's given you. That is it. So I think it's really important to find out who the director is. When I booked Pain and Gain and I knew it was Michael Bay, it told me a little bit about what we were going to do with this piece. You know, I knew how he shot things. I knew what kind of action he wanted, but this was a piece that he had wanted to do for like 20 years, but he had all these deals with Paramount before that. So they wanted just action, action, action. And he wanted something that was a little more story driven. It was a very different piece for him. But it's, you know, you learn a lot from who's attached to a piece. But script is obviously, you know, the very biggest clue that you're going to get.
What about you, Shane?
Yeah, I would say that. I would 100% say that it's the script. And sometimes something is just so incredibly written that you're just like, oh my God, I have to be in this movie. Now, granted, you might not get cast in it, but just as an actor, that's where your heart goes, as you go, this script is unbelievable. And,
right.
And just to be, you know, a part of something like that sometimes is worthwhile. You know, but you also just never know. I mean, you never know. Sometimes movies, I mean, like, look at, just as an example of Good Will Hunting, that everybody passed on and no one wanted to make. And finally, what was it? Gus Van Sant finally at a party was like, all right, fine, I'll do your movie, whatever that story is. And then he ends up winning an Academy Award for, you know, they win an Academy Award for the best screenplay, and they couldn't get the movie made, you know? And that's just like one example, but there are so many stories that are like that. So the other thing I would say is, if you're a creative, if you've got a script, if you're a talent, believing in yourself and believing in this story that you have to tell is valid. I mean, it's one of the things that, you know, Keili and I are doing now, is going, what can we get off the ground and produce ourselves and act in ourselves and wrangle people together for, and use our relationships to make happen. Because, and it's scary because you're putting your ass on the line. You're vouching you're vouching for the material. You're demanding the money, the budget, and then you're also roping your friends and loved ones into this thing, and you're putting your ass on the line. But
and that's the truth. And the whole, I think the whole key to that is having like all the right motherfuckers around you, you know? And I'm looking on here and I'm seeing Steve's on there, and Maya's on there, and Johnny Crown's on there, and Bab's on there, and I see you, Gabe. You know, all these people, and we, you know, in our studio, Richard tells us to just not wait. Don't wait for the phone to ring. You just create your own shit. Like, I mean, you know, whatever it is that you're after, you create the evidence, and then you present it to the world. And maybe it's not the first person who answers, the second person or whatever, but we've all, I mean, like Johnny Crown's got like a comic book series, you know. I'm sure he thought, I'm coming out here to do, you know, he's a musician as well, and an actor, and he's great at all those things. But like, you create your own shit, you know, and then you have to have that force. But we all, in our group of friends, we all, you know, we support each other and say, like, how's that thing going? Like, come on, how can I help you? Like, we've had more people hold booms for each other and like shoot shit and help edit or find the right song. And that's how